Good morning. Today I'm with Blake Allwood. He is an author you're not in Palm Springs, you're near Palm Springs, right?
In Cathedral City now, as of
Okay.
a couple weeks ago.
Okay. All right. All right. So let's hear your story. Tell me about you. We can talk about your writing in a bit, but let's hear your story. Where'd you grow up? What's your coming out story? Blah, blah, blah.
So that coming out story hasn't been thought about for about 30 years, but I will try to dust off the neural pathways and see if I can remember.
Okay.
So, my husband and I, we moved here in August. For the last 8 years, we've been traveling full time in an RV, and we settled. Like I said, like 2 weeks ago, we moved to Cathedral City, and so I am an author, which is what brings me here. And like you said, we'll talk about that in a moment. But before that, I grew up in Jacks Creek, Tennessee, which is in the middle of nowhere. It's exactly what it sounds like. There's more cows and dogs than there are people. And then I left there as quick as I could. I turned 18 and I ran away from home and went to an equally small town to go to college, a school in Lamoni, which is exactly what it sounds like. And then after that, I moved to Kansas City and fully came out of the closet. So my coming out experience was a strange one. I didn't even really know what gay was growing up until I was in college. Of course, the kids would call each other gay, but I didn't know. Yeah. The only thing I knew about gay people at that time was, and when I was around 7 or 8 years old, the family got into our conversion van, black and orange stripe, and drove down to New Orleans, and we were
Wow.
on the in the French Quarter, and of course, back in the 70s, the prostitutes were literally hanging out the windows. So it was quite an education for this very backward little country boy.
Wow.
But this fabulous drag queen walked across the street, African American, tall, slim, had this purple leotard. Of course, this is 1978, something like that. She walks across this road, purple leotard, massive, huge yellow polka dots. And my dad said, "Hey, look at that gay guy." So that's the only real relationship I had with what it meant to be gay until I was 19. I go to college, and my two best friends start dating, a man and a woman, and I have to have therapy because I didn't realize it at the time, but I had some pretty significant feelings for my male friend.
Wow.
And I'm in therapy, and the therapist says, "David, I think you're gay." And I said, "I don't want to dress up like a woman." Again, images of the purple leotard and the yellow polka dots.
You were younger. Were you attracted to men or boys?
So around 5 years old, people have asked me that before. And so around 5 years old, I knew I was different. I didn't know why I was different. I just knew I had feelings that weren't quite right compared to other people. Yeah, I would say that I knew that I thought about boys differently than other boys did. But I didn't really understand that that was attraction. I didn't know that I was going to be not getting married. I always thought I would marry someone, have kids, live a normal, from Jacks Creek, Tennessee, normal life. And so, it was all a big surprise to me.
So your therapist outed you to yourself.
She did. She laughed a lot when I told her I didn't want to dress up like a woman. And then she laughed when I explained to her that story I just told about the purple leotard. But no, she said, "I think you have an attraction to your friend." And I'm like, "That's an option? I didn't really know that that was something I could do." And I haven't looked back really since. That's when I finally figured out what it was. I'm like, "Yeah, let's go there. I like that. That's much more fun."
So what happened? I mean, so you left the therapist office and what?
Well, there wasn't really anything I could do with my friends. Neither one of them are friends anymore, needless to say. But I had a lot of thinking to do. I've always been very contemplative. So I went and I just spent a lot of time thinking about it. Shortly thereafter, we had our winter term, which I ended up going down to Mexico with a group of kids. Spent a lot of time meditating and thinking about it. So, it wasn't that extraordinary. For me, it was more of coming to terms with it. And, I also grew up a Mormon, not the Utah Mormon, but a sect of the Mormon religion based out of Independence, Missouri. So I had to come to terms with that because, I knew the church would never accept that. So I had to, work my way around all of that. And then I also wanted to be a parent. I was going to be a parent. That was just not an option. So I had to
Right.
figure that out. So, my coming out process, I was a lot older. So I wasn't a teenager trying to figure that out, thank
Right.
goodness. And I was on my own. I didn't have to depend on parents.
So how old were you when you saw the therapist? Did you say 19?
19.
Okay, and then how soon before you had your first gay experience?
So that summer, so that took place right before Christmas, and then that following summer I drove home. That's an interesting experience. So
Let's hear. Let's
I
hear.
I'm 19. Actually, at that point, I'm 20. I'm 20 years old at this point. I go to a
Right.
bar in Memphis, and I really was just looking for a hookup. I had no idea what I was doing. In Kansas City, they had a gay rag called The Current, and I got my hands on one of those.
Okay.
And so I took The Current, and I found a place that you could look up where all of the gay events were. And I found one in Memphis. I went there and got a gay rag from Memphis. I don't remember the name of that one. And I found that there's a bar, and I got myself to the bar. And I picked up this probably 35, 40-year-old guy. And he was really handsome, really tall, blonde, raggedy hair, took the punk off his ass. Excuse my language.
That's fine.
And he took me home.
We're past the 5 minute mark, so YouTube won't ding us. It's fine.
Good, good, good. I do have a bit of a potty mouth. Growing up Mormon, you learn, you're going to have that. I've learned I get to have fun now. So go home with this really sexy man. He's too drunk to get it up, but he was huge. That was a very large man, if you know what I mean. And it scared me back in the closet for a while. I did not have sex with him. He was too drunk to have sex, which probably saved me.
So had you had sex with guys before though? Before him? So
No,
that would have been
I was molested as a kid, but that wasn't enjoyable.
so that would have been your first experience with him.
Yes, that was my first. That was my first choice, I would say, in a sexual relationship.
Okay.
It was it was scary. Then the next experience I had was with an Indian man up in Des Moines, and it was wonderful. And then I never looked back after that. It was great. I highly encourage.
So you think you're gay?
Oh no, I know. There's no question. I did have one sexual relationship with a woman for about 15 minutes, and that was enough for me to know I'm not a straight man.
Really?
Not even a little bit. No,
How old were you when that happened?
19. 19.
So you were
It was all
so
that
you
same
were
year.
so you were thinking the gay thing, but you tried out the lady and it's like, nah.
Yeah. Actually, I think so. It was after the therapist. So it would have been the spring of that year. And I ended up in a relationship well, it wasn't a relationship. I ended up going out with this girl, and she was very interested in going all the way. And so she took me all the way. And then she pretended to be pregnant, and it was really a disaster. It was really rough. I mean, if the universe is trying to show a kid that you do not want to be in a relationship with women, this is the way to do it. Sticking with a woman who basically climbs on top of him and makes it happen, and then pretends to be pregnant. And then my roommate was a woman, and she was really mad because I guess she had feelings. I had no idea she had feelings, but that went really, really bad. I ended up having to move, and I moved in with a church couple that were very conservative. But the wife, she totally knew me, knew who I was. So I had a lot of sermons about not being gay. Yeah, I was ready to come out of the closet and never go back in after all of that wonderful experience. However, the guy with his foot long, that was a little scary.
The what?
It took a moment.
Did you say foot long?
Yeah, I think it probably was. He was very endowed. I've never seen another man like him, and I've seen a lot of
Wow.
men.
Yikes. Yikes.
Yeah,
All right.
it was scary.
So then how and when did you meet your husband?
So one of the things that I knew about myself early on is that I was not really a player, and I didn't really enjoy. I hated dating. I hated it. Absolutely hated it. At the time, I was teaching kindergarten out in a suburb of Kansas City, which had a very active KKK following. I ended up with the grand whatever they call them son in my classroom.
brother.
So I wasn't able to be out very much. Yeah, it was rough. It was an interesting time. So I wanted a relationship. That's really what my focus on anything was. I went through a lot of men. I asked them very clearly from the beginning, do you want children? Do you want to be married? Are you someone who wants to be in an open relationship? Although I don't think we called it that back in the 90s. But basically, are you looking for a monogamous relationship?
Right.
And most men were no, they were not. And I
Okay.
met Chuck, and he was everything that I was looking for in a guy. And I was around 24 years old, and we got together, and been together ever since. But it was 30 years Valentine's Day.
Wow. You're a unicorn.
I am a bit. So I think the kids have a term for it today. They call us demisexual. So the people who are not promiscuous, who are really looking for just kind of a one person. They have a term for that.
That's not my understanding of that word. To me, I think the actual meaning is that you
No,
want
what
an
do you think that is?
well, I think the definition is that you want because that's what I am. You want an emotional connection. You just don't want a trick. But the main component I think is that you're connected to the person in some way.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
that's my understanding as well.
yeah.
I'm actually a member of a group on Facebook of demisexual that people who identify as demisexual, and that's one of the things that we've kind of commonly seen amongst each other is we tend to be well, that's not true. There is a group of us who swing more toward one person partnership than open. But then there are quite a few who are not, definitely. So yeah.
Well, I think you can be a demisexual as long as you have connection in a serial way, like with different people.
I think it's really hard. For me, it was really hard to be one night stands. Those were gut wrenching for me. It didn't work, and I know that it's really popular in the even back, especially back in the 90s. I think it was really popular for you'd meet someone at the bar because we didn't have Grinder, and you'd meet someone at the bar or the park, and then you would do the nasty, and then you'd be on your way. And so I just those were never, and I struggled a lot with that because I was definitely an oddball in the gay community. And so, it took, I guess I was lucky having found a partner who definitely fit my need and I fit his. So it worked out really well. I just got lucky, I think.
All right. So now talk about writing. How'd you become an author?
Why did I become an author?
How did that happen?
Well, it was an interesting experience. So I have always been terrified of writing. I actually went to get my master's degree when I was teaching school and ended up quitting because I had to write a paper and it just freaked me out. So I never thought I would be a writer. But when the husband and I sold our house and moved into our RV and began traveling, I had a lot of time on my hands. I was actually finishing up a master's program. I actually went back to school and got that master's. And I began just writing. Actually, it was a foster son who was having a lot of trouble. He had moved out and then he had moved back in, and he was a young gay man having a lot of difficulty. The big blow up was when he went out with a prostitute, did not pay him, and then all of his privates were blown up all over social media.
Oops.
Yeah, you have to pay. If you offer to pay, you have to pay. Otherwise, it gets ugly.
Wow.
So I sat down and I started writing short stories just to kind of give him an idea of what it could be like to be in a relationship, that it doesn't have to be what he was doing.
Right.
And then I caught the bug. I published my first book in 2019. I self-published it. And it's
Okay.
because I knew I needed some experience writing before I started trying to go for a publisher.
Right.
And then COVID hit, and I was stuck alone. My husband was working 80-hour weeks because he's a nurse, and we were in a place I'd never been before. I didn't know anyone. You're not allowed to go out and meet people. This was in Arizona
Right.
at the time.
Right.
And so I just started writing, and I wrote a lot of books. I honestly don't know the number, to be honest.
Really?
I think it's around 35. Yeah, I
Whoa.
lost count.
Wow.
COVID was I was very bored.
So, are they all gay stories?
All but one. There's first two books that I wrote, Aiden Inspired and Bobby Transformed. Those are two gay stories. And Bobby really represents me as when I was going to college in Iowa. And then Aiden's sister, Susie, I wrote a story about her because at that time there was a political thing going on when Judge Kavanaugh was being brought in, and Blasey Ford, Dr. Blasey Ford she was being crucified. And so I wanted to write a story to support her. And so I wrote Susie Empowered, which is basically a story about a young woman who was assaulted when she was in high school. And then the politician, the guy that assaulted her, became a politician and then tried to destroy her. Of course, she's a Broadway musical star. So, yeah, so that's the only book I wrote that's about a man and a woman. All the rest of my books are about gay men.
And you're still writing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm editing. I was editing a book this morning, actually, before I came over here. And then I'm writing I'm beginning writing books about people our age, so a little bit older, because I have a lot of men in my group. Where I have a group that I started on Facebook that has around 18,000 members, called Gay Men Loving Gay Books, and it's really all about that. It's all just gay men. If you identify as a man who loves men, you
Right.
can be a member of the group. I've had a lot of them talking about, there's not a lot of books out there about men who are over 40. And
Right.
so I've got 3 books that I have started that I'm working on now. It'll probably be a year or 2 before they come out, but they're about people over 40 who are finding love. And that's it's a little bit harder to write those stories than it is about a 20-year-old who's fresh out of college looking for a relationship.
Well, if you've been with the same guy for all these years, how would you know what it's like being over 40 and out in the gay world then?
I hear a lot of stories.
Oh, you do?
I don't know if you know much about gay men, but they're not really, they don't have a problem sharing their thoughts and stories and ideas and adventures.
Well, that's why I have so many of them on here.
Yeah. 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 But yeah. I mean, I could just watch your podcast.
Right. I've
I can
got
get plenty of
I've got
information to write books. Thank
I've
you.
got stories. Oh, yeah. Huh. So who's your audience for these books?
So you may be surprised to learn that around between 85 and 95% of my readers are women. They identify as straight women. There's a percentage that identifies queer or LGBTQIA, but most of them are straight women.
Okay, so why would a straight woman want to read a romance novel about gay men?
So there's a lot of speculation, and I'm not an expert. I'm not a psychologist. You would definitely need to get into the psychology of that. I have some speculation. I think for women, sex is complicated. I think there's a lot of dynamics around women expressing their sexuality. I think there's a lot of limitations put on women. And if a woman is able to imagine herself in a gay relationship as a man, you just pretty much get rid of all of those. Men are able to have sex, and we might call each other a slut, but at the end of the day, who gives? No, we don't care. It didn't hurt my feelings at all. In fact, my friend Shane just called me a slut this morning. Didn't bother me at all. It's a miracle I even remember it, since he calls me that every day. So I think for a woman to be able to imagine being in a sexual relationship where she doesn't have all of the different rules and expectations and condemnation, she's damned if she does, and she's damned if she doesn't. But in a gay relationship, that's not the case. So I think it gives them freedom. I think it's just another step in the female sexual liberation. And I think that's why most women are attracted to gay romance.
I wonder if straight women watch gay porn. That's interesting.
Yes, they
They
do.
do? They do?
Yeah, absolutely they do. Trust me on this one. They tell me.
Wow. So you hear from some of these women?
Yeah, yeah. If you find me on Facebook and you look at my friends list, it's mostly women.
Wow.
Absolutely. And if you look at I have 4,000, almost 5,000 people on my newsletter. It's mostly women. Absolutely.
Wow. Interesting. So where do you go from here? What else besides those 3 books? What else you up to?
So, well, I mean, it just, right now is a really hard time as a writer in general. I know a lot of us are struggling because of the changes that are taking place politically and also socially. A lot of people have begun to boycott Amazon. And in those boycotts, that's really cut down on the people who are buying our books. So there's not really a career there. So at least not at the moment. So I'm pursuing more commercial writing. I still write queer. I want to write gay books. I want to write about gay people. I don't really want to write about straight people. But I'm looking more toward going more commercial and finding publishers and agents, which, is a little different. I've written what I wanted to up till now. So I'm shifting the game a little bit because my husband he says that I need to make money. It's so rude. Husbands, What do you do with them?
Well, sounds like he has a pretty good job. What's his problem?
Exactly. This is my point. This is what I've been saying.
Right.
So anyway, I am right. I've got several books in the mix. I've got one coming out June 1st. That's drag queens. And of course, that's not commercial, but
Right.
it was a lot of fun. I wrote a short story that was part of an anthology that came out in January called, I can't remember actually, something about drag. And then the book that I have coming out on June 1st is a follow up to that. And it's about a football player who he just wants to be a drag queen. And so he accomplishes that and ends up becoming pretty popular as a drag performer. And that book is called Cleats and Pumps.
Cleats and
And
pumps.
so,
Okay.
yeah, again, not commercial. I said I'm going commercial, but that one is definitely not. But anyway, it's
Wow. How do you like Palm Springs so far?
I love it. So I've lived in Kansas City most of my life. I grew up in Tennessee. I went to college in Iowa. And all of those places have been difficult to be gay in. There's not a whole lot of relationship. There's not a lot of places where you can be out and not have some kind of stress about it. We moved to out west as soon as we moved into the RV. We came to Seattle first, and then we went out east again, and then we came back and we've stayed out west since then. So we've been all over Oregon, Washington, Arizona. Now we're in California. And I love it. I love being able to go out and see, couples walking down the street, a couple of gay guys. I love being able to see my age gay guys walking down the street, holding hands. So it's just different. And it's something I haven't experienced before. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Did you say that you were in the RV 8 years?
8 years this month. We moved into the RV, I think the 17th of
So
what
is
is
that where
today.
are you based in an RV right now? Okay, so you haven't
I
like
am.
you haven't
Yeah.
like bought
So
a house or settled down here.
we bought a lot. So I
Oh,
bought a
you did.
lot in an
Oh,
RV
okay.
park. And
Okay.
yeah. So we were looking at a home and moving into the house. And then, we both talked about, so then you have to fix the roof and then you have to mow the yard and then you have to, there's all these responsibilities. And, when you live in an RV, you don't really have nearly the work that you do when you live in a home. We at one time we owned two houses. We had 3 acres. I was running an urban farm. My husband was working, and then we had foster kids, and so that was a lot of work. We were tied, really, really tied down, and so the thought of moving back into a home or even a condo, it's really hard. I mean, we're not. It's just we love the freedom. If we don't want to be where we're at, we can literally get in, turn a key, and we leave and we have the freedom to come and go. We have a really nice RV. We're 450 square feet. We have four slides. It's not a camper. It's a home, and so we both really enjoy it. And so we decided not to buy the house. We would have had to sell the RV to buy the house, and neither one of us were ready to do it. So we bought the lot instead, and we really love it. And it's
I cannot imagine driving something that big through traffic.
I do not. I don't. That's what husbands are
All
for.
right. All right. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up here?
Well, we did. Well, yeah. So one thing is I have two pen names, Blake Allwood. But if you like fantasy, I would highly encourage you to look up my Adam J. Ridley books. So they're all romance. So I write about hope. I write about relationships. No matter what happens in any of my books, as bad as it gets, everybody's going to get a happily ever after. That's the promise. So, but yeah, if you like fantasy, Adam J. Ridley. If you like more romance based books, Blake Allwood, check me out
Well,
because
we're,
Daddy
we're
needs new shoes.
there you go. Yeah, we'll put links in the episode notes. They can find you and do all that stuff. So, all right. So I always ask one question before we end. What have you learned in your life? What is like a lesson or something that you live by?
Goodness. So I've learned a lot. Don't pee on an electric fence. Don't spit in the wind. Don't play with a turd if you don't want to get shit on your hands. I learned a lot. I think the main thing, though, if I were going to give advice to a young person who's starting their life, I would say don't let people tell you who you are supposed to be. Be yourself. And it hurts. And yes, they will come after you. And yes, they'll make your life miserable, but do it anyway. You won't regret it.
It's worth it. Wow. All right. Well, thank you for coming in. hopefully this will help you with some of your books, build your audience there a little bit, and appreciate you coming in.
That'd be nice.
All right. Thanks.
All
Have a
right.
great day.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Take care.